Hi, this is Glen Marino with First Centennial Mortgage, and I'm here today with my wonderful friend Yvonne King with Inspire Realty Partners, and we have a great Hero of the Month program here today. We're here with a distinguished guest, Dr. William Walsh, and we'd like first, before we get into learning more about Dr. William and one of his many achievements, both domestically and internationally, let's find out from Yvonne, what is Inspire Heroes and what type of rewards do the heroes receive? Yvonne?
Well, thank you, Glenn. So Inspire Heroes is a program that we came up with at Inspire Realty Partners, and we partnered up with Glen at First Centennial, where a hero, which includes the military, firefighters, police officers, healthcare workers, and teachers, if they buy or sell a house with us, they get 25% of our commission on the buy, 20% goes to the actual hero, and 5% goes to a charity that they pick. And they get a free appraisal from Glen's office, that we have attorneys in the program that offer discounts, we have title companies that offer discounts, and then they get the $7,500
In National Merchant Discount coupons from
major stores, Costco, Bed Bath & Beyond, Target, all the places you need to go when you want to fill your new house. And if you're selling a house, you get all the discounts as well.
And the great thing is, it's all at the cost of zero.
Zero to the hero, right. It's just our way of saying thank you for everything that you do for us.
So, yeah, it's a great program, a great thank you program. We can't thank our heroes enough for what they do for our country, for our communities, and what our heroes do internationally also. So today, let's get to know our hero of the month, Dr. William Walsh. Dr. William Walsh, welcome.
You can call me Bill.
Okay, I'll call you Bill.
Nobody wants a Dr. Bill.
Well, we've been chatting a little bit before this with Bill, and he is so fascinating. And I'm going to let him start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your background. Where you were from. Being a researcher, a scientist, to where you are today with some of your passions.
Well, I was always interested in science as a kid. I found school quite easy. I went to the University of Notre Dame, got a degree in chemical engineering. Then I went to the University of Michigan, got interested in nuclear research, got a master's degree there. And then I went to Iowa State University, and where I worked for a place called the Institute for Atomic Research while getting my PhD. And so then I got my degree. Finally, I worked at places like Los Alamos. I worked on actually hydrogen bomb development at a couple of places. And then I realized that wasn't really good for society. And when I was working at Argonne National Laboratory, I switched into things for the environmental research.
Okay.
And at the time, I was captain of the Argonne chess team, and we had just won the Chicago Industrial League Championship, 28 teams. And the guys in my group said, "Hey, we need to keep sharp over the summer. Why don't we play the Stateville Penitentiary? I hear they've got a lot of really good chess players there." So I organized.
How interesting!
I organized a match there, and 12 scientists they had a tournament actually to get their 12 best players, and we actually went there and they beat us, which made the Chicago Tribune the next day.
Wow.
Prisoners beat scientists.
That was the title, and so the guy I played, a fellow named Gene Newberry, was I had just come off death row, and we played in sort of a dungeon in one of these dusty buildings right inside the prison, kind of a spooky place. And anyway, I asked him if there was anything I could do to help him. He said things were pretty tough when he was on death row, but he just got off because the Supreme Court got rid of the death penalty, and so now he was in population. So life is better now for him. And so I wrote down a couple of things I could help him with, and I asked if there was anything else I could do, and he looked me in the eye and said, "Do you really mean that?" And I said, "Yeah." So he went off with a friend, and he wrote out a list of about 25 things they needed. Of course, they wanted better food, but they wanted training, education, recreation programs, medical care. They didn't have safety. I found out for $20 you could bribe a guard, and in the middle of the night they would open your lock and somebody else's lock, and they would come and get you. There were things like that going on, and so I did my best. Well, for 18 years I worked on his list, and friends of mine at Argonne and in local churches in Naperville, they said, can I come too? And eventually I had a group of about 125 volunteers.
Wow.
But my education started when I started working with ex-offenders, trying to help people getting out of prison, which is when they really needed help. And I got to meet the families, and I got to hear a surprising story from many of them, namely that they knew there was something wrong with this child before they were born, or right after they were born, and sometimes as early as 6 months old. Mothers would say that when they tried to train a child to eat, they wouldn't let you feed them. They had to do it themselves. They were sort of oppositional. They became defiant and oppositional. They would harm the family pet. I've met several families said that the child had actually murdered their family pet.
Oh my God.
By 2 or 3 years old. These families, many of them, were good families and capable families and caring families who had produced the criminal. And many of them had brothers and sisters who were just fine.
Yeah.
And they were just horrified by this. And very often you would have a child who would be in counseling by the time they're 4 years old. And then they would be on medication by the time they were 6 years old. And then very often they'd have some sort of residential placement. And the parents just said, well, we did everything we could, but he seemed a bit like he was headed for the prison at the time he was born. So being scientists, a lot of my people, engineers, scientists, technology types, we realized that we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't understand what a behavior disorder is and why these people were there. So we started studying, and within a year, I started doing experiments. I started getting samples of their hair and their blood and their urine and their tissues, and checked out their chemistry. And I had world-class chemists at Argonne who volunteered to do all this for free. They were working evenings and weekends.
Oh my God.
We had no money to fund this, but we just did it. And we did a couple of formal double-blind control experiments, and we found that the chemistry of these people with behavior disorders is different from the general population. Then one thing led to another, and we got to the point where I got to meet the great Carl Pfeiffer of Princeton, New Jersey, who was the world's leading expert in you might say, nutritional psychiatry. Okay. And he was world famous for developing drug-free programs for schizophrenics. And he volunteered to help me, and I started bringing criminals to Princeton, New Jersey. The first group were 5 desperados fresh out of prison, and I had, by that time I had found a pattern of chemistry that was associated with sociopaths, the most violent, scary ones of all. And 5 of us plus me, we took a plane and I stayed at the Holiday Inn with them. It was a pretty interesting day. But what was really interesting is what happened the next day at the clinic, and the great man had a lab that tested them all, and he said, Bill, they're all the same. They all have the same abnormal chemistry. They all have high blood histamine, low blood spermine, elevated tryptopyrroles in their urine, and on and on. And what surprised me is as I got up to leave, I was excited because he found correlations. He said, wait, you can't leave yet. And he gave me 5 pieces of paper, and they were treatment programs. Nutrient therapy, he said, you can correct every one of these imbalances. He said, you should do this, you'll feel better. So that's how I really started.
Through nutrition? Well,
not quite nutrition, but some of them had, for example, zinc deficiency.
Okay.
Others had folate abnormalities that we now know has a great effect on your mental health, and methylation disorders, and some of them had toxic elevations. But all of those, he had a treatment for all of those things. And so that's how we started. And I collaborated with him for 12 years. He got interested in violence, and so I started bringing him people out of, parolees and all. But we found we got our best results with kids. We never really succeeded in finding a way to help the adult criminals, because it seemed like 5 years, they would get better, but then a few years later they'd be back in prison. And they would then send me a letter of apology saying, gee, I'm sorry, but I stopped compliance with this. But it worked great for children with the same chemistry. So that's how we started. And eventually I opened a not-for-profit public charity here in Illinois. And then we founded a clinic in 1989, and we saw eventually 30,000 very troubled people. I've seen more autistics than anybody in the world, I believe, 6,500 cases of autism. And we had a treatment for autism that I think is really quite effective and is used by doctors throughout the world. 10,000 behavior patients. So eventually, I decided that instead of having one clinic, that what we really needed was hundreds of these. So I decided to set up a program to train doctors, and that's what I have going on right now. We have a international physician training program, and it's growing, and a lot of enthusiasm from the doctors and the psychiatrists that we train. And my goal is 1,000 doctors.
And it's not just domestically, this is internationally?
We have 330 in the USA. We have more than 300 in Australia. I've got dozens in Norway. In fact, we have, I believe they're in about 30 countries throughout the world. Nigeria.
And has autism grown in reported cases or in the United States in the last several years?
It has, and since 1990, it's grown spectacularly. Instead of 1 in roughly 10,000, it's now less than 1 in 100.
Do we know why?
I think I have a good idea of why, but it's controversial. We know what it is, but we don't know why. And there's arguments about what causes it. We know it has a lot to do with genetics. Some people are born with a predisposition for autism, others are not. That's obvious. Anyway, we're going to have our next physician training program in Evanston. We'll have about between 80 and 100 doctors, many of them psychiatrists, and in 4 days we will give them all the neuroscience and the biochemistry, and then have them actually see actual patients come in, and we go through cases where there'll be somebody we haven't met ourselves before, do a medical history, get the lab work, and then develop a treatment diagnosis and treatment. And so we're training them to do that.
And is this through that nutrition therapy?
We call it advanced nutrient therapy, or some people call it nutritional psychiatry, but it's a growing field. And really what's happened is that the brain science, the neuroscientists from throughout the world have learned so much about the brain that they have therapies that haven't even begun to get into clinical practice. Doctors don't know a lot about this yet. And so there's no money in it because everybody's out trying to get the next billion-dollar drug.
Yep.
So it takes a charity, maybe like ours, to sort of try to lead the way, because we now know that we can help. We can fix most people's brain problems like bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, and behavior disorders, and ADHD. We can help many of them without having to use a foreign molecule. Now, we're not against drugs. They've helped millions of people. I've had people tell me that that a drug saved their life.
Sure.
However, there's a better way to do it, I think, and it's going to take a while for all this knowledge to filter in. For example, we now understand what postpartum depression is. We published a paper on that, and virtually everyone we've seen, we've seen 800 people with postpartum depression, all females, of course, and we've done a careful study of women who had children without postpartum depression and those who did. It has everything to do with mental metabolism. They are born with an inability to regulate things like copper and zinc, especially copper, and copper escalates during a pregnancy. And they don't have the ability to normalize it afterwards. And that raises their norepinephrine, knocks down their dopamine activity.
Sure.
We have better than 90% success in completely correcting the problem. So I think we can eliminate that from society, but nobody yet seems to really jump at that. It seems like everybody still wants to take a pill or get a drug. It'll come. I mean, we understand what it is. So excuse me for that. Sorry about that. Phone rang. I get a lot of phone calls. We think we have the answer to what bipolar disorder is. We just presented that at the American Psychiatric Association annual meeting. I'm writing a book on it. I've written a book called Nutrient Power, which is available on our website, walshinstitute.org. We're a public charity. We see a lot of people in the community who have severe problems and know about us, and we meet with them, counsel them, direct them to a doctor who can help them. We never charge anybody anything. I mean, we're a pure charity, and we don't care about money. It seems like people come forward and provide us with the funds we need whenever we need something. I've got a very small, very dedicated, very capable staff. We're tiny. I mean, we're well known. We're known throughout the world. Yeah, I had a visitor from Africa come about 6 months ago. When he came, he wanted to spend a month working with me in my clinic and in my facility and in my lab. Well, he didn't know that this is about it right here. I had to send him back within a day, after a day. But we're small, but we're very. I think we've accomplished a lot. So basically, it's to me the question is, when a person has depression, what does that mean? We've learned that psychiatry has a misconception about depression, and I presented this at the APA meeting too. And basically, he told the world psychiatrists that they're doing it wrong. And what they're doing wrong is they're assuming that if you're depressed, you have low serotonin activity. Well, I've got the world's biggest chemistry database for depression. And there are 5 completely different types of depression. And they involve different neurotransmitters that are misbehaving. And they all need a completely different treatment. So that's one thing the psychiatrists are getting really excited about. Now, instead of, if they see a patient with depression or anxiety or whatever, instead of spending 30 minutes wondering, what drug shall I give them? Now they can do blood and urine tests that cost maybe $300 or $400, and they can find out what neurotransmitters have gone wrong, and they can learn how to fix many of these problems without using drugs. And they can also be guided as to which drugs to use. Our testing can show them which drugs are more effective.
I gotta believe that society, parents, I've got to have such a keen interest in what you're doing, because from the peer bank of adults that I have as friends, everyone will talk about their child has this anxiety or has this depression or has, and whether it's social pressures or whether it's academic pressures, but it just seems like there's more and more of that in society. I've got to believe that people are keenly interested in what you're doing in your research and your remedies.
Anybody who's had more than one child realizes how different they can be. They're innately different. Oh. And it has a lot. It has everything to do with their DNA, and that's going to be the future of medicine. Is going to be preserving the quality or the integrity of our DNA, because our DNA doesn't just give us blue eyes or being tall or short or whatever. It's working all day, every day to nourish every cell in our body, including our brain cells. And we now know that cancer occurs when our DNA begins to deteriorate and change and gets overwhelmed. We know that it's pretty clear that that's what causes schizophrenia, and that's what causes autism. It's what's known as epigenetics, the new science of epigenetics. And So I'm really excited about the future.
So you see that in this new field of study that there's going to be cures for the cancers and for the autism, or treatments, let's say, for the.
I think what we are going to have is, I think we can eliminate cancer and heart disease and autism from society. I'm sure it's coming, and the reason it's coming is because we now already know what causes cancer. For example, we know what the cause is. And it has to do with our DNA, something called DNA repair. Our DNA is assaulted every day, but if it gets overwhelmed, then you can develop what's called a cancer stem cell, and that means a person will have to face that challenge the rest of their life. They might survive or they might not, but we know how to prevent it. There are blood tests today that can identify people right on the verge of cancer. Wow. I used to think that cancer was something that would come gradually. No, it's an event. It's an event when your DNA suddenly reaches a breaking point. And we can now have the ability to do blood tests that can identify if you're about to get cancer, and we can tell them how to avoid it.
Oh my goodness.
All you need to do is just load them up with antioxidants, and you can save almost all of them. So I think cancer is going to disappear from society.
Oh, that would be great.
Oh, absolutely.
Not to mention
So great.
schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and all these other nasty things people or many of them. And I think eventually, we live longer than we used to. When I was a child, lifespan expectancy was 68 for males and 70 for females. Now it's over 80. I think eventually it'll be about 120.
I'm there with you
That's my
then.
goal.
I'm there. It's my goal.
You might have to be hit by a truck in order to die. But it all has to do with, excuse me again, I'm not sure who that is. I don't get that many phone calls, but I got a couple. No, I think that it's just a matter of time, and I think people will have healthy, be okay. They could be. I can imagine people 100 years old still, fully capable.
That's.
I think it's coming. now that we understand what it is. The problem is that medical science hasn't really joined into this. Most of the money seems to be spent on medication research to get the next billion-dollar drug.
That is where I see the challenge, is because you've got, we're going to call it the lobbyists, or you've got the pharmaceuticals that would rather spend the time and energy and money on developing a pill that they can distribute to millions and billions of people versus
natural therapies that for which there is no great financial reward.
Correct.
However, people can get better and live a better life. So that's really my present passion, is to get that word out and do whatever I can. And I think I tried originally to go to the leaders, and I would go to I've spoke at the United States Senate, the Surgeon General's office, these major conferences, and I talked to corrections officials in states saying, hey, we know how to eliminate or greatly reduce crime and violence. Nobody would listen to it. I was once in California with the director of juvenile corrections for the whole state, and after he heard my presentation, he says, hey, this is wonderful, Bill. He put his arm around me as we were walking out. He says, but don't recommend anything that'll reduce the size of my budget.
Oh,
And yeah,
so sad.
But anyway, that's part of the problem. But the good news is that the science is there. We already have the science, and it's just a matter of allowing that to make its way into treatment.
Where can people find, do you have a website, or where can people find out more information on what you've been talking about?
We have a nice website. It's called walshinstitute.org. We have a book called Nutrient Power that I wrote 6 years ago. It's become a bestseller, and it's available on our website. It's a textbook for the doctors that we train. We have a lot of videos. If you get on our website, you'll see a lot of YouTube videos. In fact, I just found out that we've already had more than 1 million people have watched videos I've done, which means I better be careful with what I say.
Very good. Well, can you also tell us a little bit more about you as a person? What's the family look like? Your wife, your children?
Wife, 5 children, 3 grandchildren. And I had a couple of challenges. 2 of my children were somewhat handicapped. I had a son who, before he was 2 years old, fell down the basement stairs, needed brain surgery, and was quite handicapped, and is now recovering really nicely. In fact, he's been going to, at the age of 20, he couldn't do a lot, but now he's been going to COD and getting good grades, and he's got a job starting next week at Central DuPage Hospital, where he was born.
Oh, how great!
It's not a great technical job, but he's doing well. I had a daughter diagnosed with severe autism at the University of Northwestern, and she was terribly handicapped until she met Dr. Carl Pfeiffer, who checked her chemistry out and found she had extraordinary chemical imbalances, and we got it corrected with nutrient therapy, and we were told she would never ever go to mainstream or make it through high school. And she was supposed to go to Little Friends in Naperville. That was her staffing.
Sure.
Well, after Pfeiffer got treated her, mainstreamed her in Naperville Central, and she's now a college graduate.
Oh, congratulations.
And so she's done. I had nothing to do with this. Carl Pfeiffer is responsible for that. Plus, wonderful people at Easter Seals that really helped her.
Absolutely.
So anyway, myself, I'm a fanatic. I used to love chess. Handball, I was handball champion at the University of Michigan, and I loved that until people didn't stop playing it, so I had to take up racquetball, and I managed to get I had a couple of
Do you still play it today?
championships. I stopped playing about a year ago. My wrist started to ache after I would play, but people tell me that I'm really kind of a calm, relaxed person, but on a racquetball court, I get rather nasty.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I don't know if you know, in the city of Chicago, the fire commissioner had many of the Chicago firehouses had built-in handball courts.
I know, I've played some of these guys. They're really good.
They're really good.
That's all they do.
Because when I was growing up in college, I played a lot of handball, and I would show up at the firehouses, and the rules were you mop the floor beforehand, you mop the floor afterward, as long as the fire commissioner wasn't using the court. And that was kind of fun, because sometimes he would come over and he'd use it, and so we would get booted off, but they had a viewing stage from up above, so we would watch them play, and and then we'd play then afterward. But as you said, after handball, people stopped playing it, so I went to
The
racquetball.
racquetball,
Also,
which is fun.
it is. It's a very good workout. Well, so that seems to be your recreational passion.
That and I love sports. I love football, basketball, baseball.
Well,
I love to watch it.
well, are you watching the Bears?
I am. I was a Detroit Lion fan until I moved here and got to watch the great Gale Sayers. And so now I'm a Chicago Bear fan.
Great. And so I guess your goals from here are to continue to grow your non-for-profit organization, to continue to educate doctors, to continue to get that nutrient power into society's hands, and bring it into the limelight, overcome the pharmaceutical lobbyists that are preventing it from becoming, if you want to call it, in the limelight.
Yeah, we know that we've analyzed and estimated how many people we've impacted, and it looks like more than 500,000 people have already received our nutrient therapies. And so that's great. And I think that's the way to the future. That's the way to the future, I think.
Well, we can't thank you enough, and so this is just a token of our appreciation for what you do for society, for the country, and internationally, because you're affecting people's lives all over the world. We can only say thank you for what you do, and our way of saying thank you is that we've got this little gift basket. It's a little placard that says you're our hero of the month. You can put it on your wall amongst all your other trophies. We have a bottle of wine. We have some chocolates here for you. We have a gift certificate from Mon Ami Gabby. You can go out to the restaurant and have a nice dinner with the missus.
I know that place.
And we also have a calendar from Yvonne that you can also make sure that you're always on time for all of your appointments. We just want to say thank you so much for what you do and how you contribute to society. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to share some of this with my very dedicated, hardworking staff people.
Absolutely. Enjoy.